Okay, everyone, let's go ahead and get started. Welcome to another USAT webinar. Today, we are joined by our friends at Lightspeed Automation and Breaktime Vending to discuss 5 ways to increase efficiencies with an integrated pre-kitting and back office platform. So thank you guys for jumping on and joining us today. My name is Sarah Eiliff. I serve as the Partner Marketing Manager here at USA Technologies. And today we're going to discuss how Seed and Lightspeed integrate to solve for common operator challenges within your warehouse, routes, and across your machines. Before we get started, I want to provide some basic guidance for the webinar today. You'll notice on the right side of your screen, there is a go-to meeting questions box. Here you can list any questions that you have for our speakers today. And at the end of the session, we'll go ahead and take the time to answer as many of them as we can. We will be collecting questions throughout the presentation, so feel free to post questions at any time throughout. All right. I'm going to start out here with a little quick overview of what we'll cover in today's presentation. We're going to start off our session today discussing how Seed and Lightspeed integrate to drive efficiencies across your operation, and we'll walk through ways this integrated system can make remerchandising easier to execute on your end. We then address some common operator questions, such as how you should be pre-picking your beverages. And then we're going to talk with Tim at Breaktime about best practices and how he truly benefits from using both Seed and Lightspeed. At the end, we're going to wrap up with questions that you guys have asked throughout, and then open up the floor to any additional Q&A. Today's presentation is presented by Bill Bartholic of USA Technologies. We have David Marler joining us from Lightspeed and Tim Jordan from Breaktime Vending. So a big thanks to all of them for joining us today. I'm going to kick it off here with a few introductions on our speakers. I'm going to go ahead and start out with Bill. Bill's career began back in 1993 while still in high school, working for a small regional operator. Upon graduating college, he took on a full-time role and drove the company into the future through some strategic acquisitions and technological advancements. After leaving the industry for a few years, Bill returned to work with companies throughout the country on expanding their technological footprint, bringing USA Technologies' enterprise platform into their operations. Today, Bill serves as a senior sales director for USAT. Bill resides in Woodstock, Connecticut with his wife, Michelle, son, Liam, daughter, Ellie, and their dogs, Curly and Maggie. Bill, thanks for being here today.
Sure, thanks for having me.
Next up, we have David Marler, VP of Sales and Marketing at Lightspeed, a native to the Atlanta area and a true Georgia Tech fan. David has a BS in Business Administration, along with a master's degree from the School of Hard Knocks, while owning 2 separate businesses. From feeling the pain of covering a payroll to the stress of exceeding a sales quota, he has developed a simple and very common sense approach to the world of sales and marketing. He brings his skill set to the world of warehouse automation with Lightspeed as their VP of Sales and Marketing. In his 6 years at Lightspeed, he's helped the company achieve significant growth and profits with the successful launch of new products and bringing technology to smaller operators. David currently lives in Alpharetta, Georgia with his wife, Sherry, and their 1-year-old golden retriever, Palmer. David, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks, Sarah. My pleasure.
Next up, last but not least, we have Tim Jordan. He serves as the operations manager for Breaktime Vending out in Corbin, Kentucky. Tim has been with Breaktime on the vending side for 6 years now and really spearheaded the implementation of both Lightspeed and Seed through the operation. Tim, thanks for joining us today.
Glad to be here.
I'm going to give you guys just a quick little overview of Breaktime, let you know a little bit about them. Breaktime is located out in Corbin, Kentucky, so more of a rural operator. They currently operate with 50 employees. They're running 35 routes and have 3 warehouses. We got a gorgeous picture there of one of their warehouses out in Kentucky. Okay, well, thank you guys. With that, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Bill and David to get us started.
Sarah, thank you very much again. Real excited to have this opportunity today to speak about some of the challenges operators face, along with some of the benefits that they can see with the usage of Lightspeed automation and Seed software services. So let's go through some common challenges first, right? And these are all different environments that your company may be in today and what they're looking at, right? So you have the traditional, non-connected vending model, right? And that's still out there, and you're looking to move now from the rolling warehouses to more of a pre-kitted operation, right? So obviously there's some challenges to get there, but now that you have connected machines, right? You want to make sure you take advantage of those connections and that data, and you want to elevate the customer experience, right? So we want to start to go from that rolling warehouse to more of a pre-kitting operation, right? So the second one here is, you're pre-kitting currently, but your system and VMS are not integrated, right? You move to the VMS, but you're picking off paper, or you're picking from trucks. How do you get to that next level of automation, and how can you be supported in that quest? Okay, so now we're at that next level, right? We're pre-kitting and you're using the VMS, but maybe you're not optimizing the integrated abilities, right? So maybe you're pre-kitting your markets and your OCS and your vending separately, or maybe you're doing one in one system and one in another, right? So again, you need to use that live data that you're getting. You want to integrate it all together. You want to make sure you take advantage of all these systems that you're using and that you're paying for. It's very important, right? So those are some of the challenges that we're going to look at. Before we get to that, we want to talk about kind of what is USA Technologies Seed software? What is it, right? So USA Technologies Seed software, it's a fully integrated cloud-based platform, all right, that allows an operator to run all their lines of business under one umbrella. The software platform, along with the connected POS, connected point of sales for your vending and micro market business, allows you the opportunity to know where to go, when to go, and what to take. Again, listen to that. Where to go, when to go, and what to take. Very important in this business. So that's kind of Seed software, and let's look at the next piece of this, which is something we're really going to dig deep into today, right? It's merchandising. And I always love it because people love talking about merchandising, right? But what is merchandising? So we take the definition of it's the promotion of goods that are available for retail sale, right? Very simple. This includes the determination of quantities. In this business that we're in, it's, setting capacity and power levels, extremely important. What to sell, the right product in the right slot, right? And then the proper pricing. All three of those pieces together get you proper merchandising. Now that's great, Bill, right? Merchandising sounds so easy, right? Now the big key is, though, can you actually make that happen on a scalable, basis with your current, VMS and, automation for your warehouse? So, the key again, putting the right products in the right places to maximize sales and increase customer satisfaction. Again, sounds very easy, but you need the ease and ability to accomplish this. This is something that Tim's going to get, I think, into with some depth today, and how Breaktime accomplished this using Lightspeed and Seed together. So then again, you're going to hear a lot of this today when you're talking about utilizing data from machines to properly merchandise your products, right? There was always, for a long period of time, maybe a set it and forget it mentality, right? Hey, my Doritos are on A1 and that's where they are, and they sell pretty good, so that's great, right? But again, the key of dynamically merchandising along with dynamic scheduling really adds efficiencies, right? So in Seed, we have something called Spotlight Reports, which you can pull up and look at that, along with the merchandising wizard, right? We want to try to make that as automated as possible for you, so you can accomplish merchandising fairly easily, right? And then my favorite, it's low selling items. Maybe not my favorite, but low selling items are what can easily make or break your business, right? Everyone can make money on machines that sell out. Okay, that's the easy part. The hard part now is you have these low selling items, right, in your machines that either a customer requests or that you have to sell, right? The ability to find the spots for these slow selling items, or repurposing them to other machines or markets, or in your OCS business. And you want to make more money by doing that, right? So you need to be able to have that insight. You need to be able to see what those are doing. You need to make the moves when you see a low selling item. You bring it to a different machine, and hey, now it becomes a really good selling item. You got to have that deftness in your business. So we're going to talk through that today as well with Tim. All right, now I'm going to introduce David here, and he's going to start to speak about Lightspeed automation and also about pre-kit.
Lightspeed comes along at the tail end of the technology chain when you've taken the time and the money to invest in understanding the merchandising that Bill's talking about. You're analyzing the spirals. You're looking at when you need to go to a machine and how often you need to go to a machine. It kind of defeats the whole purpose if you don't invest in the back of the warehouse and bring the same level of efficiency to the warehouse people that you're bringing to your route drivers on the front side or the outside, if you will. So what Lightspeed does is we take the orders directly from USAT that you're taking to a specific machine or to a market, and then we organize and schedule, or not schedule, but map the products in the warehouse so that the employees back there that are pre-kitting these orders are going to be able to quickly and accurately pick what needs to go into that tote that's going to that machine. So the machine's got to be connected in order to report the data to have the pre-kitting order come back into the warehouse. Totes are packed, they're tagged with the right machine, the right route number on it. It makes, Lightspeed will take the mapping process in the warehouse and send the picker through the warehouse in a map route to be able to pick multiple orders at the same time without ever having to go back and double back to pick something. The second thing that we'll do back there is we'll send back to USAT what actually got picked. So it eliminates anybody from having to take a piece of paper, make a change to an order, you give it to somebody in the office to update the order, the replenishment at a computer. So we automatically send those updates back. And when you get to the completion of this entire process, when you can eliminate the rolling warehouse off the truck, you'll see a substantial savings in your overall inventory. Because if you have 10 routes and you basically have 10 inventories out there, when you consolidate that into one inventory in the warehouse, there are substantial savings. Number one, you reduce the total amount of product that you have to carry. Number two, you'll see a significant decrease in the spoilage. Too many times we've helped customers or operators convert to pre-kitting only to find cases of pastry that were a year old on a truck that were being used as cushions to keep product from falling over. So there's a lot of benefits to pre-kitting, and obviously Lightspeed's on the backside of that technology curve once you've invested in your VMS and specifically USAT. So enough about Lightspeed. Let's bring Tim into the conversation. Tim, you're the main reason we're here today because you are a Lightspeed and USAT customer. And I know that when you and I started having this conversation a couple of years ago, you expressed to me that your challenges were high windshield time, your drivers were spending a lot of time on the road, and admittedly, your route average was well below the industry average. So why don't you start with your story and tell us what you did to kind of start the process of getting to higher route averages?
Well, as an operations manager, of course, your main goal is to always improve profitability, and we went down the road with pricing and cashless and done all the things that vending companies do, but you can only take both of them so far, and then you're looking for something else. And when we looked at the overall operation, our two biggest expenses were the trucks on the road and the payroll that went with them. And because of the area that I'm in, we cover right at 100-mile circle. I got route trucks that do 50,000 miles a year. I got guys that drive 2 hours to get to their first stop. Windshield time and that truck on the road, low route averages was something that needed a cure. And I started talking with other vending operators and conventions and different things, and run across a guy named Ron White in Louisville, Total Vend, and paid him a visit in, I think it was November of 17, seeing his operation and how efficient it was and how well it worked and everything that he was doing. And the very next week I called you, David. I mean, it was the no-brainer for us to go down that road.
So you reached out, you started with Lightspeed, you were using a VMS at the time, but you also told us you weren't quite convinced. You wanted to go visit some other operators. What were some of the things that you saw when you visited other folks in the area?
Well, first thing I noticed was, after visiting a couple of vending companies, was there's no one size fits all. And every vending warehouse that I went to had a different configuration, different line. Some were straight, some were U. everybody just kind of fitted into their warehouse or whatever, building that they had and made it work. So that, was your first challenge. And that was something that concerned us from the beginning, because the first warehouse we was going to put it in was one of our smaller warehouses. But you came up and looked at what we had and said it would work in here, and we ended up going back and forth with blueprints and drawings, and in no time we had a plan, and the Lightspeed actually fit in the warehouse we had. And after we got it installed, we actually had more space than what we had before Lightspeed. Something that was unexpected there.
So now, one of the things that we talked about during our visits was it wasn't just the pick line; it was the entire warehouse flow. Where did the product come into the building? How did it move to the line? Where do you actually stage the totes before they go on the trucks? Where do the trucks get loaded? I mean, part of the efficiency of running a really well-run warehouse is not touching stuff more than you have to touch it. So that was part of our process, was it not, that we looked at the entire flow of the product through the warehouse? Yes,
and there was things that I was mainly focused on the four walls I had and the square feet I had on the inside, and so I kind of drawn up a plan of the way I thought it would look, and you helped me, like, well, did you think about this? Did you think about that? Where's your stock come in? Where does your trucks load out? And that's probably why we had to redraw the plan, a few times, but very, very pleased with what we have now. And I've had other vending companies come and visit the warehouse, and everybody really likes the setup that we have in that warehouse. It's very smooth.
So we got Lightspeed in, we got it operating, but you still weren't happy. So walk us through the second half of this.
After we got it installed and got to picking the routes, and I guess our biggest issue was accuracy. We was having way more bringbacks than I thought we should have had, and in other cases wasn't picking enough for other machines, and that was a big issue. A lot of time and money and energy went into this project, and we wasn't going to settle for it to not work the way it should be worked, not being as efficient as it could be. We fit this for probably 7 or 8 months. A lot of phone calls, a lot of conferences, a lot of emails, talked to a lot of people, and at the end of the day, we decided to switch vending management systems.
Right. So, with that, Tim, you had Lightspeed implemented. You were still feeling some of these problems, and I think I spoke about this a little earlier. I don't want to put words into your mouth, but I think the goal for you was maybe to use that live data that you're getting in from the machines, right, to make the decisions make more sense, right, for your pre-kits. I think maybe another piece you spoke about was bringing all those lines of business, because you run a pretty substantial markets business, you do OCS and you do vending as well, and you really want to pick those as one if you could, correct?
Yes, and before we had our markets on, actually we had our markets on 3 or 4 different systems depending on the market kiosk we were using. We had OCS and we had vending, and at the end of the month we was having to look under a lot of rocks to just run a report. That's not a problem now. We have everything in Seed. Our delivery, we're even doing our service, and we're taking advantage of everything Seed has to offer and trying to use all of its bells and whistles.
So prior to implemented Lightspeed and then Seed beyond that, do you think you had the ability to schedule it dynamically using another VMS, or was that something that really helped you once you made that move?
Actually, we hadn't even thought of dynamic scheduling before. Everything was on a static schedule, and we would look at sales reports and try to move that static schedule. Can this one go to twice a week, or this one we're going to have to move to 3 times a week, or and we spent a lot of time deciding and making them decisions, and now we don't. Everything is picked. We decide every morning where we're going, and it's based on the need that machine or that market needs. need serviced. And so we're not wasting no time, showing up to a machine that don't really need no product or don't really need serviced. It's much more efficient than what we were doing before.
Oh, that makes sense. So, I mean, since I brought it up first when we got into this webinar about merchandising, I know we've spoken a lot about this on what you specifically do with merchandising, because I think that's extremely interesting for a lot of operators listening here, because I do think merchandising machines is one of the biggest challenges that operators face. Can you tell us kind of some of your thoughts behind merchandising, and maybe if you have any little anecdotes or anything about it? I think that'd be interesting for the people on the call.
Well, one of the things that we've done that might be a little different is, when I went out and visited the other vending companies, I asked, simple questions. What do you like? What don't you like? What does your customers like and don't like? What would you do different? And the same question kind of come up, everywhere I went, was their biggest complaint was the same products over and over and over, no change, no variety, no, that same thing every week, week in and week out in the machines. And so that was one of the first things we was wanting to solve when we went to Lightspeed, was not, always having that same chip or same cake or same candy bar in that same row every single week, week in and week out. And so we kind of developed a little system to probably 30% of our snacks, 30% of our cakes and candy bars, we do them on a revolving. We change them out every week. So we'll take, 30% or so of each section, and we'll put it on a revolving. We'll just call that light revolving A. And we'll tie 3 or 4 or sometimes, just 2 different products to that. And we'll order one week and order one the next week. And so you're seeing something different in your machines and in your market every week.
Tim, that's tough to execute, especially if you're pre-kitting. And I know we probably have other Lightspeed customers on the webinar. How do you actually use Lightspeed to be able to handle that product rotation and know that it's correct, and knowing that the right product's going to the right machine in the right spiral?
Well, we assign that spiral, and instead of giving it a name like Reese Cup or whatever, we named it rotational A snack and rotational A cake. And so we'll tie 3 or 4 UPCs, 3 or 4 different cakes to that light. And then when we order for the warehouse, we have, a certain product we order on week 1 and a certain product we order on week 2. And when the second product comes in, we don't take the other one off and change at the end of the week. We just stock that next item in, and when we get to it, we get to it, and bring the next item in the next week, and just let it just flow through the lights.
And the drivers know where the product is supposed to go, even though it might be sour cream and onion chips today and barbecue chips next week.
They know that it goes in rotational A or rotational B or rotational C. Yes, they know which items go to which section in the machine.
What type of products are you able to rotate? I know you've mentioned chips. I know you've mentioned candy bars before. Do you do the same thing with pastry?
We do the same thing with pastry. So if we have, say 6 pastry in a machine, we'll have what we call our staple items. They're the 3 best sellers, for example, that we'll keep in the machine all the time, be it honey buns or chocolate donuts. And then we'll take 2 or 3 of the spirals, and we'll put them on rotational so that there's something different coming in that slot every week. So they see something different each week when they come to work.
And just, you may not be able to answer this question, but what kind of % of increase in sales do you think you get as a result of rotating versus a static planogram?
I can't really give you a percentage. I could probably look it up, but off the top of my head, I know that we had some items that did not sell well enough for us to keep full time, in a machine or even in a market. But if you pull that item out for a couple of weeks and then bring it in for a week, it blows out. Its sales is more than what it would have been if you kept it in there all the time. It's really quite amazing to watch it when you when you don't have something in for a couple of weeks and then you bring it in for a week, the sales lift you'll get off that item for that week.
Okay. Well, Tim, before we move on to Freakeating Beverages, which is near and dear to my heart, your results are kind of on the screen right now. Doubled your route average.
More than doubled. More than doubled.
You enabled the drivers to spend less time at each location, increase the number of stops, so you were able to increase your sales without picking up new accounts. But what are some of the other benefits that you got from the USAT Lightspeed teamwork?
Very many. Let's start with, we like the fact that we're working a machine when it needs worked. You know, it's a waste of everybody's time when you show up to a machine that needs, 25 items and it's not really sold out just because you're there. And then it's also not beneficial if you have one that you show up and it's completely empty and you've missed sales. So we think that helped lift the sales. We also think that having the right variety in the machine in the right spot it has also helped our sales where, sometimes at the end of the day, a machine will get whatever's left on the truck or get 2 or 3, slots of something that don't need. And that's not an issue no more. Now the machines look good and there's a good set of variety in them and they're being serviced when they need service.
I want to stop you right there because you told us something yesterday that I'm gonna put you on the spot and I'm gonna ask you this question right now. You told us about a cookout you had for your team a couple weeks ago. You had 10 route drivers come back in that day to participate in the cookout. Out of all 10 routes, what were the total number of bringbacks for all 10 of them?
I'm wanting to say 6 or 7 items.
6 or 7 items.
It's only 2 drivers that brought things back. 8 trucks didn't bring nothing back.
That's awesome.
That's amazing. It's hard to believe, actually.
That was on an average Wednesday, and that's where we're at now with our accuracy, and that's it's impressive to us because of where we was at before. We see the difference.
Excellent. Well, Sarah, let's move on and talk about Freakeating Beverages. So, Tim, you were one of the first customers that I dealt with that came out of the gate Freakeating Beverages and Freakeating Beverages on lights. 2-part question. Why did you come out of the gate with beverages on lights? And B, or number 2, was it worth it?
Well, like I said yesterday, I could almost turn this question around and ask, why wouldn't you put your beverages on lights? But the whole reason for doing Lightspeed and pre-picking your orders is to get as much out of that truck as you can each day while it's on the road. And having that driver spend less time in that truck picking and sorting and pulling, and when you can have all them orders already, pulled and stacked for him, you're saving time on that route truck every day, and you can work more accounts every day by picking your beverages in. Plus the accuracy is, it's going to be right.
I probably get asked this question more than any other question I get from operators is do I pre-kit or bulk pick beverages? You obviously made the decision to pre-kit, and the follow-up question I get is how do you do that? What container does it go in? How do you keep it from being too heavy? How do you deal with the different size, shapes, and bottles of different waters and coffees and energy drinks? Walk us through how you do that.
Okay, that was a learning curve for us. We first set our drink line up. We thought, well, we'll run a report, and whatever sells first, we'll put first, and whatever sells worst, we'll put last. And that didn't work out very well. Cans and bottles and different size containers don't mix very well we use pop crates. We use, Pepsi and Coke crates to pull our orders in. So we rearranged our line to where we do all the canned drinks first. Then we slide over to 20 ounce, and actually on the 20 ounce, we keep all the bottles. There's some companies that are all the same size, and then you have another company that's just a little bit taller. We kind of have them towards the end, and then that migrates into your energy, Gatorade, and your juices on down. So it actually works pretty good. There's a little thought involved sometimes. If you've got 4 or 5 bottles that are just a little bit bigger than the rest, you make sure you put them in the corners, but it's really not an issue for us picking or servicing either one.
Do you have the same concept of rotating seasonal beverages like you do with chips and pastry and candy?
Yes and no. We don't have as many items that we do that way in the drink, but yes, we do that in the drink.
Okay.
Not on our staple items. Is your Pepsi and Coke, of course, stay there all the time. It's the flavors that come about so many times a year that we set up rotational items for them.
Okay, and how did the other question I get asked all the time about moving to pre-kitting, and especially pre-kitting beverages, is pushback from the drivers. How did your drivers accept your decisions to move forward with this?
With pre-kitting the drinks?
Yep.
Well, we started day one, so they never had to really. They come from a rolling warehouse to day one, their drinks being pre-kitted. And I don't know why a route driver would complain about having his drinks already picked for every machine and for every market. That's time he don't have to take to go through the bulk and separate his order out each day or for each stop in each machine.
That makes sense.
I wouldn't think there'd be a driver complaining about that. So,
no, that makes sense. Yeah. Yes, you would. No, that makes sense though. So, all right, Tim, we got kind of through most of this here, but we want to talk about implementation, right? So, this doesn't just happen overnight. Obviously you went from, the rolling warehouses, at the beginning of this, you went from the rolling warehouses with very few connected machines, the drivers going out there and just trying to do their best with what they had, to now today you're almost fully up and running with Lightspeed in both your warehouses. You are fully up and running with Seed. Now you're making all these moves where you're going to move to the next step. Now you're going to dynamically schedule more. You're going to look at the service tickets, you do all these different things, right? But it takes some time to get there. So let me kind of walk you through kind of from what I understand what you did, and then you can kind of add some color to it. Okay. So, you had the warehouse up in Richmond, right? Which was, as you said, the smaller vending footprint, but I know it's a pretty good sized markets footprint, where you went Lightspeed first. You were using Lightspeed there. You had another VMS at that time, and then you decided that you were gonna move right to Seed, and this was about 1.5 years ago when you made this decision, right? So how, I guess, did that implementation process go once you made that decision? Was there support from our teams, and what did that look like, and what kind of buy-in did it call for your team as well? And then how does that kind of look as you're going through that process of adding more cashless, of moving to Lights, and now the Southern warehouse in Corbin? What did that look like overall?
Well, first off, the support is great, always has been, and that's I can't say enough about the support we get. We ask a question, we get an answer, and even if the answer is "I'll get back to you," we get an answer. So we're real impressed with the customer service piece of it, and you need that when you're going from something you don't know to something you do know, when you're trying to figure it out. But when it came time to actually do the switch, USAT sent down our own person, a specialist, I guess.
Yeah,
Susan.
CSM. Yep, CSM.
Yeah, CSM. I know there was a name for it, and Susan stayed a week with us. As we say here, she broke bread with us every day, so she was with us for a whole week, and that was back in was that back in November of last year? I don't think there's a week goes by that we don't have a conversation with Susan. We constantly reach out to her for little things, and she's just great to work with.
Nice.
And you're not too bad, but
I'm not too bad myself. I know. I try my best, So, and then it seems like, just to end this, it seems like you've then decided, maybe because of the success in Richmond, putting it all together. And I know you kind of were doing Lightspeed secondary at Corbin, but I believe that's now happening here in the next short period of time. Is that correct?
Yes, we we started down this road in November of 17. We actually went live with Lightspeed in our Richmond warehouse in July of 18, and our goal was to go live here in 19. We postponed that because it wasn't working the way we wanted it to work, and I didn't want to move it to my bigger warehouse until we had all the wrinkles smoothed out of it and it humming along smoothly. So that being said, it's where we want it to be. It works flawlessly. We've not had much issues, and we're putting it in this warehouse. And actually, Lightspeed will be here the week of July 27th for my install here. So we're just a few weeks away from having it in the Corbin warehouse.
Sounds great. It's awesome. All right, thanks, Tim. I think we want to go through a few key takeaways here that we learned today, and what we're gonna do here is so we have the first one's the ability to merchandise and effectively you will increase your operational efficiencies, right? So I started out with this webinar on speaking about merchandising, and it's great to talk about, right? And it's great to say, hey, we should all be doing this, but I think it's also something to learn when we actually talk to an operator who is doing it and succeeding with it, using Lightspeed automation and USA Technology seed software together. So that's the first key takeaway to this is actually, I think, learning a little more about an operator does that.
The second takeaway is one of my favorite sayings, and that size does not matter. We have large operators that use Lightspeed. We have small operators that use Lightspeed. But the seed Lightspeed combination that we've talked about today is able to be scaled to any operator of any size. Tim's running 35 routes out of 3 warehouses, but he's in a very rural part of the country. This is not something for the big boys. We collectively have customers that have probably as little as 3 routes. So this is not just for big guys. It's for anybody who wants to get more efficiency out of their operation.
Okay, the third one we want to go through is implementing an integrated management system to pick vending, markets, OCS, and pantry all in one place, right? Extremely important. You want all these pieces to report together. You want to be able to pick them together. So using disparate platforms that don't work in concert with each other will never get you the gains that you want, right? Being able to have these different systems work together, using Seed and Lightspeed it'll drive you forward. It'll make you a better business.
The fourth takeaway, which I obviously is near and dear to our heart, is that you can pre-kit beverages. You should pre-kit beverages. Pre-kitting the beverages in the warehouse using Lightspeed is going to provide more efficiency. It's going to increase your route average, and it's going to make sure the right drinks get in the machine every time.
Okay, and the fifth is, implementing technology is not easy. It can be daunting. With the right partner and a phased approach, we treat your business like our own and try to, ensure a flexible process to meet your needs, right? I've been involved in numerous technology upgrades, both as a salesperson now with USA Technologies for the last 3 years, but also when I was in operations, right? We made many different changes to our business. The key is to take steps forward every day, right? You want to take those steps forward with your partners, right? So if your partners aren't there for you to take those steps forward, that's an issue, right? You got to work through that. If you take the approach of going forward every day, you're gonna have all the tools for a successful project and implementation. Again, it's working in concert with your technology partner, but always taking steps forward. I think we learned that today with Tim.
All right. I want to say a big thank you to Bill, David, and Tim for a really great discussion today. Let's jump into some of your questions you've had throughout the presentation. If you haven't submitted a question yet, please feel free to do so in that box on the right. We'll try to get through everyone here. We've got a few minutes to run through. So let me get started here. All right. The first question is, can you please go over the product changes in Lightspeed and how Seed goes ahead to process those?
Tim, I think you probably are better suited to answer that question than any of us are.
So the question was, how do we process it?
How do product changes in Lightspeed, how does Seed process those changes?
Tim, I
So
think they're asking. I think they're asking about how do you identify the product in seed to match it up with the particular light and Lightspeed, so that the picker knows which item to pick.
Okay, the picker just picks whatever the light tells him to pick, so it's not an issue with the picker. As far as the route driver knowing, what to put where in the machine and in the market, we have certain spots or spirals that are slotted for, revolving chip A or revolving chip B, and they also know, and we have a little, list that we can give them, a little cheat sheet that kind of tells which 3 chips are in revolving A or which 2 products are in revolving B. But after they've been on a route for a while, they just kind of learn, which 2 or 3 products go in which revolving spot.
Right. I think it's obviously simple enough for product changes in the planograms and seed. Those are just going to upload to Lightspeed, and you'll see that in the pick line, right? But when you're talking about these, the rotational items, you guys kind of have like an internal code for what those rotational items will be, and you can easily pick those, through the lights through seed.
Yes.
Makes sense.
Yeah, we got a lot of questions on the rotational items. Folks are wondering how you track the sales on your rotational items. Is it difficult to know what item you're reviewing?
It's a great question.
I don't know if I can answer that one or not. We the guy who orders for the warehouse, he just orders, X amount of each week, and kind of knows, how many cases he needs for that rotational item. And if an item sells a little better, then on the next rotation, he'll order a little more. We have noticed that things that normally would be, a 15 or 20 case a week item, when you pull it out for a couple weeks and put it in, instead of being a 15 case a week, it'll jump up to 40 or 50 that week, because it's not been out there, as long.
Sarah, obviously there's some reports in seed, and there's reports in Lightspeed that allow you to pull them on a daily basis to see how much of a particular product got left the warehouse that day. And if it's on our report as rotational chip A, someone in that building's got to know that rotational chip A is sour cream and onion this week. And the quantities that are being picked that day are sour cream and onion. So it's not exactly the easiest reporting to find out what you're selling when you label something generic like that. But according to Tim and his data, the sales lift by doing that is offset not knowing exactly how many units are being sold.
Okay. Now we can sort through the sales with the UPC, which matches up with that specific product. That's why we, tie the UPC to that rotational item, and that's probably how we track it, is to the UPC.
That's interesting.
Got it. That makes sense. One person's asking, it sounds like Lightspeed and Seed helped you save time with drivers from picking, but did that mean you had to add staff to your pick line?
We didn't have to add staff. We may have added, we may use a little more hours in our warehouse on the pick line, because we're doing so much more, but it's still more efficient to have a little more labor in your warehouse than it is on a route truck, out in the market. So if I think it's, more efficient to have that labor inside the warehouse than it is out on the truck.
Sarah, most of the time when we see this, there's typically route consolidation. So when maybe in Tim's case, he couldn't because of the distance that they were driving, but for operators who don't necessarily have the same footprint, you usually see a reduction in driver salary because you're consolidating routes. And typically warehouse labor is less expensive than driver labor is.
It is.
Yeah. And again, I think what Tim saw was, like you said earlier, that more than double route averages, so maybe his guys had more time in the day, right? Or his drivers had more time in the day to do things. So you same driver, right? Same footprint, but double the money in. I mean, those are just great things.
Yeah, overall, our payroll is less than what it was before, even with, the extra people inside the warehouse pulling the orders.
Okay, we got a time for a couple more. We have a ton of questions coming in, so we'll make sure that we get answers out to you guys when we send the recording of this out as well. But we'll throw a couple more out to the guys. Do you guys use seed for markets? And if so, how well does it work?
Yes, we use seed for markets. We like it. It works just as well as it did using the back door, or actually probably a little bit better for us than the back doors that we were using. And we really like having it all together we can go to one screen in one spot and see everything. And that's efficient on our part, to manage everything.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, how did you get bringbacks to almost zero? Are you filling your machines totally full or only filling to 80%?
Every machine is different. It just takes a little bit of initial legwork and identify, I guess, your needs and your machines and your markets. And it don't happen day one, but after you get it sorted out, it does. We use the seed merchandising wizard. That's a real big help for us.
And I can kind of answer a little bit of that question as well. I would say that what the CSMs do in most circumstances, if you're going to locations that maybe you go to traditionally on a weekly model or a bi-weekly model, those machines you would just take the actual live data, not any forecasting at all, right? So if you're 1 or 2 short from the back there, it's not going to matter because you're still going to be there. And if you have them merchandised correctly, in 12 to 14 or 17 days, whatever it is. But then when you start to get into these machines that are daily or every other day, where you got to actually add forecasted products to it, that's really where you get in trouble in a lot of different VMSs, where you get in trouble when you have a lot of overpicks, right? Because they're just kind of doing forecasting on a like a global basis versus looking at it on a per item basis. And I think that's kind of where Seed, and Lightspeed and where they kind of stand out. We're looking at it, with the forecasted data much more, on a daily basis, right? So you can use your live data and then a piece of the forecasted data. So it just makes a much better merchandised and filled machine when you do that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, so I think that's probably a good place to end it right now, just based on our timing. But don't worry, we will go through the questions that you guys submitted, and we will include a follow-up email to get you guys responses on those. Big thank you again to our presenters, and of course, a big thank you to all of you for joining us today. And in case you are interested in rewatching today's presentation, we will send out a replay later this week. Keep an eye out for that email. We'll also include the answers to those questions. But until next time, have a great rest of your week, and thank you for joining us. Have a great day.
Yes, thanks everybody.